Welcome to all for logging on today for part of our information series for the Oswim and aquatic family while we're in this incredibly challenging time. We hope to bring you all a little closer together whilst we're in isolation. We're going to focus today on pools and maintenance systems, and we're very pleased to introduce Craig O'Neill and Matt Harrison from Commercial Pool Systems. Welcome, gentlemen. Now, today's session is not here to tell you how to suck eggs, as you may have a really great knowledge and understanding of your own maintenance system, but you may get some simple tips or reaffirm what you already know. Welcome, guys. To start off with, Craig, perhaps can you tell us what is it that Commercial Pool Systems do?
We service the aquatic swimming pool sector, and essentially that takes us through from a small 1,000 litre spa in a hotel right up to a 2 million litre pool in a council or at a university or you know, sort of a similar aquatic facility. We pretty much will service everything in the sector. We specialise on not only the service, but manufacturing of dosing systems, installation of filtration, secondary disinfection, right through to our cloud-based remote monitoring system. In the commercial sector, particularly private learn to swim, we see a really big variance from one end of the market to the other. And it can be anywhere from a small above ground pool with a domestic 25 metre pool with a, you know, automated backwash system and you know, ground up design filtration system. Each system is inherently different, and there's not really one approach that suits all pools. So we're going to try and obviously cover off on a couple of options today, and work out the general pros and cons of each, and sort of, you know, try and break it down for information that's readily accessible for most of your members.
Fantastic. That sounds great, Craig. So, Matt, what options do sites have to cut back or actually stop their circulation systems?
So basically, there's a couple of different options that facilities can implement here. What we're going to touch on, as Craig's already mentioned, is this isn't a cookie cutter approach. So what's good for one facility or one organisation might not necessarily fit for another organisation or company. So basically, the Pool Water Treatment Advisory Group, which is the largest commercial organisation in Europe, have recommended two methods in reducing costs associated to your facility, and that is either a reduced circulation approach or a complete shutdown of the facility.
So, Craig, what does a complete turn-off entail?
It's one or two options. Firstly is literally just turning the filtration system off. The second option would be turning it off and draining the pool. Mm-hmm. The Pool Water Treatment Advisory Group obviously advises to shock dose before either of those options are done. Mm-hmm. The downside of that is that, you know, it can risk damaging the interior finish of the pool, particularly if it's a vinyl pool. And it can sometimes bleach the fiberglass for a fiberglass pool if it's there for any extended period of time. If stopping the pool isn't done properly, it can actually create a number of problems at the other end. And probably one of the most significant is biofouling in the filters, where, as you can imagine, in a kids learn to swim environment, there's a lot of body fats and you know, other organic matter in the filter. And if the system isn't wound down properly, that can actually biofoul or you know, can essentially congeal in the filter, and can then cause other problems when the pool's obviously reinstated and back up and running. There are some other smaller issues like pump seals rusting, you know, inside the pump casing, the bearings inside the motors, you know, they need to run regularly to warm up and move the oil around. So, it can cause a couple of issues sort of further down the track. Draining the pool, we would really only say is an absolute last resort. Over and above the issues that I've just spoken about, you know, fiberglass pools can pop out of the ground. The walls can cave in. Same with vinyl liner pools. The liner can move because it's actually the weight of the water that holds the liner in place. And the other thing that can happen is, because the surface then comes to ambient, you can get different expansion rates between the pool shell and the finish, which can cause things like, if there's drummy tiles or quartz render on the pool, it can cause them to delaminate and obviously pop off. So although the running costs are virtually zero when you stop a pool, it can actually cause more issues down the track. And particularly, if you let it go green, then there's obviously labor costs and shock dosing to get it back. There's extra backwashing. There's an increased load on the filtration system to try and clear it up. And certainly if you empty it, there's the costs of, if it's a salt pool, it needs to be replenished with salt or minerals, and obviously, the chemicals to go in and get it back up and running again.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Craig. So what about the pros and cons of a complete turning off a system?
Well, look, probably as I've just touched on, the energy costs are almost zero with a total shutdown, but the startup costs can be significant, depending on how long this current situation goes for. Maintenance also is something that people need to consider, because a complete shutdown, you don't know if there's a problem with the pool heater or the filtration pump or the dosing system, and they can all sort of bottleneck in the time when everyone's trying to get their facility back up and running. Some of the service companies have had to shed staff, and we sort of have this worry that everyone will come online together and there'll be a bottleneck of service, and people trying to get pumps fixed and boilers serviced and everything back up and running. So that's why we really recommend a complete shutdown, really only as a last resort.
Thanks, that's good advice. So, mate, can you take us through what are the steps of either a partial or reduced shutdown? What's involved?
Yeah, so this is the recommended approach, as Craig just sort of touched. Filters, your pumps, so all the equipment continues to run. So you will know if your pumps need a service or anything like that. Keeps the bearings moving. So basically a partial shutdown is effectively putting the pool into like a limp mode or reduced circulation. So in terms of doing this for the pumps, you can, instead of running them, for example, for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, you might choose to run them for 6 hours a day for 6 hours a day for every 24 hours. Again, this isn't cookie cutter approach. This is just advisory. So whatever works for your system. So in terms of heating as well, we don't recommend closing off heating loops, anything like that. Like if you can keep all the circulation open in terms of your valves, and then reduce the temperatures for your heaters, so that way you're not running your pool water as warm. So this will have a number of beneficial factors. So as the pool water cools, the half-life of chlorine in colder pool water will increase. So the chlorine in the pool water will actually last longer, therefore treating the water for a longer period of time. So you're reducing your chemical consumption there. Reducing the heating as well will also stabilize factors like your pH, your total alkalinity, calcium, other factors. So also you're keeping your water moving through your filters, so you're not going to run into that sort of biofoul situation within your filters and your media and things like that. So also keeping water flow across your probes for your dosing system, because if your probes dry out, anything like that, then that'll be costly on startup. So you want to reduce as many factors, these startup factors, as possible.
So what about factors such as like secondary disinfection?
So with secondary disinfection, there are a couple of different options again. You can either leave this system on. The secondary disinfection via UV and or ozone will treat a large amount of water for very little power consumption. So it'll treat waterborne pathogens such as Cryptosporidium, E. coli, those sorts of things. And it'll also take the load off the chlorine, as well as obviously no one's going to be using the pools at this point in time. The only thing, if you do decide to shut it down, a couple of things to be wary of is that you've got to make sure that your flow switches or flow control is working properly, because UV systems, if they run dry, you risk damage to your sleeves, your lamps. Again, these are costly on startup, and if your system's sitting idle, you're not going to know about these until you start the system back up. Likewise, if you're constantly turning the systems on and off via power, this will also reduce the life expectancy of lamps and things like that with the power surges that are associated. So rather than sort of putting them into a limp mode, you either really want to run them continuously with the system, or you want to shut them down completely.
Oh. So really, there's a lot in that. So thanks, Matt. So maybe a question for you, Craig. Is there anything else the facility should be doing in these times?
Oh, look, ideally, and possibly should have covered it at the start, was if the facility has a cover, make sure the cover's always on the pool while it's not being used. Besides stopping foreign matter coming into the pool and taking the load off the dosing and secondary disinfection system, it also reduces evaporation or almost eliminates evaporation, which saves on the need for, constantly topping the pool up. And for any pools that do see any UV penetration, obviously algae needs UV to grow, natural sunlight to grow. So a good cover will stop the UV penetration and, basically keeping the algae at bay, as part of a sort of a multi-pronged solution with a chlorine level and, a little bit of water filtration, should mean that when the cover comes back off, everything's, almost ready to go.
So Craig, is there anything else a facility should be doing in these times?
Yeah, look, I appreciate it's hard. A lot of facilities don't have the funds to do scheduled maintenance at the moment, but it is really unusual to have such a large period of downtime for a commercial facility, certainly in the middle of the year. We try and squeeze most of our maintenance in for the 3 weeks over Christmas, and people are trying to upgrade dosing systems and do the scheduled maintenance on their filtration and changing media and, you know, overhauling pumps. If facilities do have the budget to do it now, it is the right time to do it. Certainly, major items like new interiors, tile works, you know, anything that requires downtime of the pool itself. If the facility has the funds to do it, it is the right time to do it now. I mean, it can sort of extend through to not only just the pool and the plant, but things like the photometers, you know, the manual testing. You know, it's hard to find time during the year to send your manual testing photometer away to be calibrated and serviced, because a lot of places don't like to be without it. That's a relatively low ticket item that, you know, that you could comfortably be without a photometer for 3 weeks at the moment. Any sort of upgrades, a lot of companies are doing deals at the moment to obviously to try and keep staff moving and keep product moving. So anyone that does have the funds and was thinking about some sort of plan upgrade, now's a good time. You know, it's really a good time to do it.
Advice, Craig. Is there anything else you think that facilities could do?
Look, just make sure that all the equipment and the chemicals are stored away properly. Bear in mind that, you know, chlorine, liquid chlorine does have a half-life and it does go off. So if any facilities are sitting on a large amount of liquid chlorine for an extended period of time, it does lose strength. You know, every month it loses more and more strength. So, you know, as long as the chemicals are stored away properly and facilities know that, I mean, that applies to facilities that are running anyway, but really that's about the most that you know, a facility can do.
Sure, that's a really good point. Thanks, Craig. So, okay, Matt, when this situation's over, what should a facility do to prepare the pool for reopening?
As mentioned earlier, that we're expecting a bottleneck of service calls and requests as pools start to open. So something to do is preempt all this. So if you can start up your pool 1 to 2 weeks before, if feasible, before any bathers or patronage comes back to your facility, this will give you a head start so you can preempt any issues that may occur within pumps need to be serviced, for photometers, things like that. Just make sure everything's neat and tidy within the facility. Allow the pool water to be chemically balanced, all the filters to be cleaned, and yeah, all the dosing systems effectively up and running properly, so that you know with your manual tests compared to your automatic tests, if you have that option, that they are within close proximity to each other.
Oh, great. And is there anything else a facility can do to reduce costs?
So basically, one thing that may not have been thought of is also the air handling for the pool hall itself. So not only, like, if you're reducing the temperature of your pool water, you can reduce the temperature of the pool hall. So ideally you want to be within sort of one degree there or thereabouts of your pool water, just to stop any condensation that may happen on windows or anything like that. So for instance, if you've dropped your pool temperature at a reduced circulation rate to 20 degrees, you'll keep your pool air handling system at about 20, 21.
Oh, great. That's some really good points raised by yourself and by Craig today, so thank you for that. Is there facilities that may have more questions? Can they reach out to you guys for assistance?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to extend our branches of communication out to anybody there that may have further questions in what specifically relates to their facilities. So they can either get in contact with us through our 1300 number, which is 1300 897 200, or they can email us at service@compoolsolutions.com.au. compoolsys, that's COMPOOLSYS.com.au.
All right. Fantastic. Thanks, Matt. And we'll make sure those numbers and emails are up at the end of the this webinar as well. But I really want to thank yourself and Craig for joining us today. Really sharing some very worthwhile information there, and some things that I learned a bit here today myself, and made a few notes on there. And I'm sure everyone can walk away a little bit better informed. So thank you for sharing, and thank you for your time.
Not a problem. Thank you for having us. And like we said, if anybody's got any further questions, we're more than happy to do what we can to help out.
Thanks, everyone, and stay safe.